I knew something was off the moment we pulled into the driveway. The palm trees swayed lazily, just like they always did. The waves whispered in the distance, and the afternoon sun was starting to mellow. But the silence was wrong too still, like the house was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I killed the engine on the Range Rover and glanced in the rearview mirror. The twins were asleep in their car seats, their little mouths open, their cheeks sunburnt from the boat ride. Abby was scrolling through her phone, sunglasses low on her nose. It all felt normal, but something just didn't sit right. That's when I saw it. A sheet of laminated paper, bold red letters screaming at me from the front gate. 72-hour notice of eviction. HOA Order 334B. It was pinned crookedly to the gate with painter's tape. Beneath it, a stapled stack of papers flapped slightly in the breeze. Abby raised her brows and said, "What the hell?" I got out and walked over to the gate, pulling the packet off and flipping through the pages. Violation of HOA community rules, it said. Unauthorized dock construction, disruptive light pollution, noise from unapproved aircraft, refusal to pay community prestige dues, and then the kicker, the grand finale. Total fines, for $180,000. I actually laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because it was so impressively unhinged. Then came the real surprise. Just down the driveway, near the roundabout, two men in gray polos were unloading moving boxes from the back of a beat-up van. One of them was dragging a dolly toward the front porch, and the other was halfway up the steps with bubble wrap and packing tape. I waved. "Can I help you?" The guy with the dolly blinked at me. Are you the renter?" "No," I said flatly. "I'm the owner." He glanced at the van, then back at me, looking a little confused. "We got a job order from Oceanberry Shores HOA. Says we're supposed to do a non-consensual pack-out. 3-bedroom job. Eviction enforcement." I just stared at him for a second, then turned and walked into the garage. I hit the emergency override button. The steel gates hissed down behind me with a satisfying clunk, sealing the driveway. From my wrist, I tapped the lockdown protocol. The sirens didn't wail, but a low, vibrating tone began to pulse along the perimeter. Every motion-activated light clicked on in sequence like a damn Bond villain's lair. Out by the van, the men dropped the dolly and backed away slowly. One of them fumbled for his phone, probably texting Craigslist to tell them the HOA job just turned into a hostage crisis. And then, that's when I heard her. "Excuse me." A woman in a power pink blazer and pearls stomped across the lawn in kitten heels. She stopped right in front of me, hands on her hips. "You're interfering with authorized community operations," she snapped. I knew that face before she even introduced herself. Karen Huxley, self-proclaimed queen of Oceanberry Shores. She carried a clipboard and had an aura of inherited authority. "Ma'am," I said, "this property isn't in the HOA. It hasn't been for years. Your jurisdiction ends at the coconut palms." Her lips twitched as she raised her phone to record me. "You're threatening HOA contractors. You're refusing to comply with board policy. That's grounds for emergency enforcement. I will call the sheriff." "Please do," I said with a smile. "Go right ahead." Then I turned around, walked back to the garage, and rolled out my Lucid Air, matte black, parked it sideways across the driveway exit, and locked the tires. Nobody was leaving, and nobody was entering, not without going through me. Karen stood still, lips twitching. I could almost hear her internal software crashing. She looked from the car to the gates to the blinking red light above the camera, and then, like clockwork, she dialed 911. "Operator, yes, I'm being held hostage by an aggressive individual in violation of community governance. He's locked the gates. He's blocking HOA personnel. He may be armed. Send units immediately." I walked back over, leaned in just enough to be heard, and said, "And don't forget to tell them I said you broke into a property your association has no legal claim to. You brought in freelance movers without a court order, and that you're impersonating legal authority." Her eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this. I own this street." I gestured toward the sign she'd taped to my gate. "Then why are you still using paper?" She didn't answer. Sirens began wailing in the distance. Well, I finally started enjoying my damn afternoon. The patrol car rolled up just as the sun started to dip below the palmettos, casting long, sharp shadows across the driveway. The flashing blue lights reflected off the hood of my Lucid like some surreal disco ball. Abby stood on the porch, clutching one of the twins to her chest. The other was still asleep in the car. The baby monitor buzzed faintly in my pocket. 2 officers stepped out, in uniforms, mirrored sunglasses, your classic, composed professionals who'd been dealing with late-night drunks and family disputes for 20 years straight. One of them, broad, in his early 40s, heavy-set, nodded at me. "You the one called about trespassing?" Before I could answer, Karen stormed forward like a stage actor missing her cue. "Officer, thank God. This man is a danger to the community. He's illegally occupying this property. He's obstructing authorized HOA activity and may have weapons inside." The cop blinked slowly, then looked at me. I raised a hand. "Name's Dylan Sinclair. This is my residence. I'm the legal owner, and this land was removed from Oceanberry Shores HOA jurisdiction in 2009. Karen snorted. "That's outdated. There's a revised charter. We reinstated governance over rogue parcels last year. It's in the board minutes." The officer turned to his partner. "Kendra, get the body cam running." Then to me, "Do you have documentation on that?" "More than enough," I said. I unlocked my phone, scrolled through the trust documents, survey plat, county exemptions, everything notarized, dated, digital. I handed it over without a word. They took their time reviewing it. Karen stood beside them, vibrating like an overcharged chihuahua, clutching her clipboard like a rosary. Then the second officer looked up. "This LLC owns the parcel. Seahold LLC, managed by Legal Trust." "That's me. And you've got video of her crossing the boundary." I nodded. "Gate cam, also the driveway camera, north garden sensor, and internal motion logs." She cut the lock on the east gate. The first officer exhaled. "All right, that's criminal trespass." Karen's voice shot up half an octave. "Excuse me. This is a community matter. I was executing a compliance directive with forged documents." I added, flipping open the packet she'd left on my gate. "No HOA registration number, no county court stamp, and these movers." I pointed to the Craigslist duo who were now pretending to check the tires on their van, paid in cash. "No business license." The second officer approached them, had a brief exchange. I heard the words Craigslist and cash job more than once. One of the guys muttered, "Ladies said we were helping a tenant get evicted." The cop turned back. "Ma'am, this is trespassing, attempted unlawful eviction, and impersonation of authority. We'll need you to come with us or stay put while we write it up." Karen's expression curdled. "I am the authority. Do you have any idea who I am? I'll be calling the mayor. I'll have your badge." The big officer gave her the kind of smile you reserve for a chihuahua who thinks it's a Rottweiler. "Ma'am, you can call whoever you like, but right now, you're interfering with a criminal investigation." Just like that, the dynamic shifted. Karen wasn't the queen anymore. She was a trespasser with a clipboard and no crown. Her voice thinned as she tried to justify, to insist, to explain. But none of it mattered now. The sheriff's deputies documented the scene, took statements, and the movers were told to pack up and leave. One of them mouthed sorry at me on the way out. When the officers finally left, warning Karen not to set foot back on the property, she turned to me one last time, teeth clenched. "This isn't over." I met her eyes, calm, measured. "No," I said, "now it's just beginning." The morning after the HOA circus, I sat on the veranda with a mug of coffee and a folder of documents on my lap. Abby had taken the twins to the marina for the day. Part distraction, part escape. I needed the quiet, because this wasn't just about Karen anymore. This was about the game board she thought she owned, and I was done playing by her rules. By 9 a.m., I was on a call with the managing director at Shoreline Capital Bank. I calmly and politely requested the acquisition of Oceanberry Shores HOA's outstanding bond debt, $3.8 million across 6 trenches, maintenance, infrastructure, landscaping, expansion, seawall repair that had never actually happened. They weren't hard to buy. The bonds were thinly held, undersecured, and mostly backed by projected dues that were drying up. By noon, the debt belonged to me. That same afternoon, my legal team issued a formal demand notice for full and immediate repayment within 48 hours, as per the bond terms. If the HOA couldn't pay, they'd be in technical default, triggering asset liquidation. The best part? Karen didn't see it coming. While she was probably drafting another fake violation letter about the shape of my mailbox, I'd just placed her entire empire on a financial countdown. I didn't stop there. The next day, my team filed a formal audit petition under the HOA's own bylaws. Most HOAs include a clause, rarely read, rarely used, that gives major debt holders the right to audit financials. I wasn't just a member now. I was their biggest creditor. We didn't even need a court order, just paperwork and a courier. By Thursday, we had access to everything: invoices, expenditures, board votes, internal memos. And buried deep inside that slush pile of HOA spreadsheets and half-assed PDFs, a goldmine. $1.2 million had been funneled through a landscaping maintenance vendor. Huxley Environmental Design. Sounds legit, right? Except it had no website, no license, and shared a P.O. box with an auto parts reseller in Charleston. The real kicker? The business license had been filed under the name Brent Huxley, Karen's husband. I sat in my study that evening, the ocean breeze coming in slow through the open glass doors, and I actually laughed. It was too perfect. Karen, the HOA crusader, had been embezzling from her own neighbors for years, masking it behind ficus hedges and street lamp upgrades. It wasn't about power, it was about money. Friday morning, I made my move public. Oceanberry Shores held its monthly board meeting at the Clubhousea beige stucco building that looked like someone tried to design a golf course on a liquor store budget. I arrived early, wore a simple gray suit, no entourage, just a thick binder and the look of a man who didn't have time for Karen. She was already there, flanked by 2 board members and a man in a bow tie who looked like he'd Googled HOA lawyer that morning. I waited for the floor to open, then stepped forward and calmly presented the audit summary. Irregular disbursements, undeclared family vendor relationships, and multiple violations of fiduciary duty. Then I handed out the proof. Karen's face drained of color. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. One board member stared at the documents like they were printed in Greek. Another quietly slid his chair back from the table. I didn't gloat, didn't raise my voice, just laid it all out with precision. By the time I finished, the lawyer had his phone out, texting furiously. Karen, shaking slightly, muttered something about fabricated data and personal attacks. No one responded. I closed the binder, nodded to the room, and walked out. Let them sit in it. Back home, I poured a drink and watched the clubhouse lights flicker off early that night. The Queen's castle was starting to crack. It was almost 2 o'clock in the morning when my phone pinged. No alarms, no frantic screech, just a low-frequency alert. Perimeter breach, East Garden Gate. That was the gate no one ever used, half covered in vines, sensor embedded, rigged to notify me before a raccoon could finish sneezing. I sat up in bed instantly. Abby didn't stir. She had earplugs in. The twins slept like the dead. I slid out from under the sheets and pulled up the security feed. There they were. 2 figures creeping in under the hedges. One of them limping slightly. The other carrying what looked like a briefcase and a crowbar. The motion-activated night vision caught them in that eerie green-filtered glow like ghosts with bad posture. One of them turned his face toward the camera for a split second. Bingo. It was Karen. The other one. Her cousin, I guessed. I'd seen him once at the HOA's ill-fated financial audit. I activated Kbera's protocol. Silent floodlights along the hedge line clicked on, no noise, just white clinical glare. The intruders froze, silhouettes framed like rats in a diorama. Then came the low-frequency pulse. Not a siren. Not yet. But enough to make your spine hum if you were standing on the wrong patch of grass. That's when the Malinois was released. Her name was Bite. 45 pounds of lean muscle, trained in 6 languages and GPS paired to my voice. She moved like a whisper through the landscape, then materialized from the Shadowsa blur of fur and flashing teeth. Karen's cousin panicked first. He turned to run, tripped on a decorative stepping stone, and collapsed into the koi pond with a wet, echoing grunt. The briefcase splashed in after him. I heard a crack. His ankle, probably. He started wailing. Karen? She did what every narcissist does when confronted by chaos. She hid behind a garden sculpture of Poseidon, crouching like a budget Scooby-Doo villain. As Bite circled silently, I walked out onto the upper balcony in a robe and slippers, holding the remote to the gate system in one hand and my Glock in the other. Uncocked, but visible. I didn't point it, just showed it. Evening, I called out calmly. Karen flinched like I'd hit her with a spotlight. Don't move, I added. Not unless you want Bite to get curious. Her cousin moaned from the pond, clutching his leg. My ankle's broken, you psychopath. Then don't run on private property at 2 in the morning with a crowbar, I replied. I tapped my earpiece. Sheriff's office. Security breach. 2 intruders detained. Minor injury on site. Non-lethal response in progress. Karen stood up, brushing mulch off her blazer. This is a misunderstanding, she croaked. I thought there might be documents. You're hiding something. The HOA has a right to transparency. This isn't Watergate, I snapped. It's my backyard. The patrol arrived in under 7 minutes, flashing lights, radios clicking. 2 deputies took one look at the scene. Karen, damp with sweat, her cousin moaning by a stone koi, and didn't even bother hiding the smirks. They knew who she was. As they cuffed her, Karen tried one last Hail Mary. This is political. He's buying influence. He's undermining the neighborhood. He has a dog with lasers, for God's sake. She's chipped, I corrected. Not armed. Yet. The deputies hauled them both to the gate. I handed over the footage, including the infrared overlays and AI log timestamps. Karen's cousin kept crying about his ankle. Bite sat obediently by my side, panting, tail twitching like she wanted an encore. When they drove off, I stood under the porch lights for a while, watching the taillights disappear down the private lane. Then I exhaled slowly and scratched Bite behind the ear. Well, I murmured, that's one way to file for bankruptcy. By Monday morning, the HOA was bleeding from every artery. Karen had spent the weekend in holding, her cousin still in a medical boot, refusing to speak without legal counsel, and filed a formal complaint against the dog. My attorneys responded with a single-page letter quoting South Carolina's Stand Your Ground statute, followed by 3 links to civil case precedents. We didn't hear back. Meanwhile, I filed a motion for a temporary injunction against the HOA, freezing their accounts until a court could determine if fiduciary misconduct had occurred. The judge approved it within hours. They couldn't cut checks, issue fines, or even pay their lawn guy. For an organization built on control, losing the ability to mow was poetic. The following day, I filed a petition for judicial dissolution of Oceanberry Shores HOA. I wasn't doing it for vengeance. I did it because the bylaws allowed it. If a board was found to be non-compliant with fiduciary obligations, and at least one major stakeholder initiated the motion with proper cause, the court could dismantle the entire structure. And I had more than proper cause. The court hearing was scheduled just 2 weeks later. Thanks to some pressure from my legal team and the very public headlines now swirling around the case, Karen v. Billionaire, boardroom tyranny implodes. Read one headline. Another, less subtle, when you try to evict a cybersecurity mogul from his own bunker estate. At the hearing, the courtroom looked like a family funeral with better lighting. Karen arrived late, wearing a beige pantsuit and a 1,000-yard stare. Her usual entourage was absent. The board members who had once echoed her every word now sat with separate counsel and avoided eye contact. Her HOA attorney didn't even pretend to be confident. The judge, middle-aged, no nonsense, opened with a single sentence. I've reviewed the audit, the surveillance footage, and the emergency injunction documentation. Ms. Huxley, do you wish to make a statement? Karen stood, hands trembling. Your Honor, I acted in good faith. My only intent was to maintain the standards of the community. I may have made errors, but He cut her off. Errors are one thing. Embezzlement is another. This court finds Oceanberry Shores HOA in breach of fiduciary duty, operating outside its defined charter, and financially insolvent. Bang. Just like that. The HOA was legally dead. The